go to black video. On September 4th, 2018, Dr. Ronald D. Garrett was released from the Augusta Transitional Center after completing a 20-year prison sentence. Garrett now serves as the Regional Reentry Coordinator for the Welcome Home Reentry Program, a division of Catholic Charities in Washington, D.C. His primary role is to recruit and train mentors to be matched with returning citizens, the formerly incarcerated, who have been released for 12 months or less, or who are within 90 days of release. While still housed in the Augusta Transition Center, Garrett served as Business Development Coordinator for New Skill, a company dedicated to developing learners into adaptable, collaborative problem solvers with entrepreneurial drive to perform and evolve at the speed of work. On July 28th, 2018, Garrett delivered an audacious TED Talk entitled Permission to Dream Again, The Impact of Addiction on Mass Incarceration at TEDx Decatur, held at Emory University. In 2017, Garrett, along with a core leadership team, designed and implemented the Katie J. Wright Reentry Dorm Program at Phillips State Prison. This 12-month program focuses on equipping men with the soft skills of problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, entrepreneurial thinking, and diversity, which are necessary for returning citizens to be successful upon reintegration into society. In 2011, Garrett served as a chaplain's aide and a member of the core leadership team who designed and implemented the Walker Faith and Character-Based Program, a 400-bed facility which became the first faith and character-based prison within the Georgia Department of Corrections. The 2-year voluntary program is focused on character development and behavior modification. During the implementation process of this program, he served as scheduling coordinator, administrative peer counselor, co-author of the procedures manual, and he implemented the peer leadership training program. To document this historic initiative, he served as co-editor of the book project, Men of Destiny, Redeeming the Time, a collection of testimonies from the pioneer graduating class of the Walker Faith and Character-Based Program. During his incarceration, Garrett earned a BA in Theology, Master of Ministry, Church Administration, and a Doctor of Ministry, Chaplaincy Services. Garrett's vision for the future is to develop a national returning citizens organization, specifically to meet the needs of returning citizens and our families. The vision for this organization will include a church family, a faith-based transitional center, entrepreneurial thinking, job placement, mentoring, credit counseling, addiction treatment and counseling, and many other services necessary for any returning citizen to be successfully reintegrated into society. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ron Garrett.
Wow. I'm delighted to be here, and Ashley, I really thank you for that. I was sharing it with you. I didn't know you were going to share the whole thing. I thought you were going to get a little excerpt or something, but I will say to you all that I am delighted to see each one of you that have given up your precious time to hear me share with you about the Welcome Home Reentry mentoring program. I guess it's safe to say this is not something to brag on, but I'm kind of an expert in reentry and incarceration because I actually served, as you heard, 20 years of my life in the Georgia Department of Corrections. And from the outset, my goal became to see how effective reentry programming could be implemented in the prison system. I can't think of a better place for men and women to have access to job training, parenting skills, money management, introduction to computers, the soft skills necessary to be successful upon release than while serving time in prison, rather than wasting that time in prison, if that makes sense. So that was my primary goal and objective during those years. I was blessed with the opportunity to serve as the reentry coordinator for the Welcome Home Reentry Mentoring Program with Catholic Charities. Primarily, we are a mentoring program where we match returning citizens, those who are formerly incarcerated, with mentors in the community to assist them with their reintegration process. When I first started with Catholic Charities in February of 2019, I believe it was, I used to make trips to the federal prisons that are within 4.5, 5 hour drive from Washington, D.C. Well, I continually engaged individuals that had more than a year before they would be released, but who were very interested in our mentoring program. And they wanted to know, how could we get involved, or how could we begin to be equipped for our reentry process while we're still incarcerated. And so as a result of that, we've developed what we're now calling the Pintorship program. Pintor, it's a fancy word for pen pal, if you will, where as opposed to meeting in person after they are released, we match returning citizens with mentors in the community who have agreed to write them every other week. So that's basically twice a month. We have developed a interactive journaling curriculum that kind of drives the response of the mentee. We wouldn't need for every mentor to come up with a curriculum of their own, or a letter even every other week to write on their own, unless you had the desire to do so. We have a platform already created to assist you in that process. Currently, our mentoring program that meets in person pre-COVID, we're now doing all of those sessions. The mentor and the mentee are doing their sessions via phone call or a video call. Zoom has become one of the most important dynamics to my life, because it allowed us to be able, we didn't have to stop meeting the needs of the mentees in our program because COVID came into being. What we had to do is learn how to adapt and grow. And so I've learned a whole lot about how Zoom works and many of these social media platforms to stay in touch with our mentees. I would like to say that currently, well, let me say this part. There are many people who are somewhat skeptical about becoming a mentor for a returning citizen. People have the thought of, I've never been an alcoholic, or I've never been on drugs, I've never been incarcerated. What do I have to share with a returning citizen? Well, to be quite honest with you, the faces that I'm looking at are the perfect audience, the perfect team of individuals to mentor returning citizens, because you have a wealth of practical life experiences. One of the things that we focus on when a mentee signs up to be in our program, the first thing that I do is we complete what is called an individualized reentry plan. That plan covers 4 primary areas: employment, housing, family connections, and I'm about to miss the last one. Employment, housing, family connections, and money management. Okay. If a person, when they come in our program, let's say the individual is homeless, or for instance, we will record where they are, where they started, and then we will ask them, what is your goal for housing? And of course, their goal is going to be to have independent, long-term housing. That will be the goal. So now what we would do is develop a process of steps or goals to help walk them through that process. From the housing piece, they may go from the homeless shelter. My next step would be to enroll them in a transition housing program in the district, which many of them do exist. Then to independent living. We don't have to come up with the vision or the dream or the goal for our mentee's life. They already know where they want to go. Their primary difficulty is understanding or walking through the steps to get them there, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to everybody? So we don't have to figure it out for them, to be honest with you. Most of our returning citizens have been away out of society for something like, on average, 7 years, on average. but there's a great number, 15, 20 years. So if you could imagine a person who has been incarcerated for 15 years of their life. I'm gonna use myself for an example. I had never turned on a laptop before I went to prison. I had never logged into Facebook before I went to things like navigating social media, understanding how to set up an email, how to connect a document to an email that you're sending someone, how to understand how to effectively communicate in the many ways that are available today, other than a traditional landline telephone, is life-changing. And these are things that, again, you already understand those processes. When you have parents who have been out of the lives of their children 7, 10, 12, 15 years, assisting them with your wisdom of how to reestablish that parent-child relationship. Another great issue that really led to many returning citizens being in prison or jail in the first place has been their inability to manage money correctly. These are tools that we are all proficient in. Some of the faces that I'm looking at, you're actually masters at that, because you wouldn't own the homes that you own, the retirements that you have great, solid financial stability. Being able to pass along those tools to mentees is life-changing. I promise you, it's life-changing, and you're well equipped to do it. For those who would be willing to consider being a mentor with Catholic Charities, the process would include completing an application online, and I'll get this all out to you in writing through Miss Ashley Click and through Miss Clifton. Completing an application online, attending a Catholic Charities orientation, which is generally 2.5 to 3 hours on a Wednesday or evening from 6 to 8:30, or a Saturday from 9 to 12:30. Pre-COVID, that was done in person, which required people to, drive across town, come to our Hickey Street location, fight through the ordeal of finding parking, paying for parking, and all of those challenges. But COVID has taught us that we could do our orientations via Zoom. I love it. So that removed a lot of barriers for a lot of individuals as it relates to participating in our orientation. Each year, we conduct 4 mentor training workshops. We ask that our mentors, we have one each quarter. We ask that our mentors would commit to attending just one of those workshops per year. But of course, if you wanted to attend all 4, they are all different. If you wanted to attend all 4, you would be more than welcome to do that. And then once a year in the month of April, if I get that correct, we have a Welcome Home Reentry Mentoring Volunteer Appreciation that we love to invite all of our mentors and mentees to attend. And I hope this didn't sound very, very complicated, because it is really not. It's more so the greatest investment for this process to become a mentor with Catholic Charities is a heart of compassion to help somebody that is really in need of your wisdom and your time, and being willing to make that investment of your time 1 hour a week, via Zoom call, writing a letter, or a traditional phone call is life-changing for our returning citizens. So I'm gonna conclude there. I promise you, I'm a talker, Miss Clifton knows I'm a preacher too, so I have to stop. I have to stop sometimes. So I don't want to get into. I don't want to hold you too long. But if anybody has additional questions, I'll be more than happy to.
Yeah, we do have some questions. I had
Okay.
people put them in the chat. So,
Sure.
how do you match mentors with volunteers, and are there any risks that people should be concerned about?
The primary way we match mentors with volunteers is in the application process for the mentor as well as the mentee. We have what is called an interview form. I personally ask the questions of the mentee. For those who are released, we will sit down and do the interview application. For those who are still incarcerated, they would record their own answers and send them to me. You know, things about what are some of your favorite hobbies? What are your personal interests? How many children do you have? How long have you been in prison? You know, just to get a small snapshot of their personal life. The mentors also in your application, you would have what is called an interview form that you would answer similar questions. We like to match, one of the key things I like to match people that has been very helpful is just a common interest in, say, career, for instance. Believe it or not, we have many returning citizens. Some want to be journalists one day. Some want to publish a book. Some want to get their CDL license and become a truck driver. If there are mentors in our wheelhouse that have one of those skill sets, those are some of the determining factors we use to match our mentors and mentees. I try to never, I haven't up until this point, although we have the liberty, I'll say this, we have the liberty to match men and women as in a mentor-mentee relationship. I choose not to do that because it's just, it's complicated enough. It's complicated enough. So I try to keep the, men with men and the ladies with ladies. I think it works out a lot better that way.
One person wants to know what portion of the people leaving prison are women that are part of the program.
Oh my Lord. When I started, I was actually taken aback at the fact that there were more lady mentees in the program than there were men. And believe it or not, the reason that is because I have, in the past, we've had much more success with having women who would be willing to volunteer as mentors. I have much more of a struggle with the men, getting them to take on that commitment. But right now, just for your information's sake, women are the fastest growing segment of population to be incarcerated right now. So, but if I had to give you a number right now, we're at about 50-50 for the 50 mentor-mentee relationships that we have.
And can you share what the age ranges of the mentees are?
In order to be enrolled in our program, you have to be a minimum of 18. I do have one gentleman that is 68, would be my oldest. In one of the other programs, we had a gentleman who is 77 years old. And we actually, I don't know if any of you all know Deacon Jim Knowles by any chance, but he's with Catholic Charities, but he is one of the directors for Catholic Charities. He signed up to be a mentor specifically to mentor this particular gentleman. So,
do all the pen pal relationships turn into an in-person mentorship?
They do not. We have some mentors who would rather just be in a writing relationship. And I want to explain that part before I'm going to answer two questions right here. In the writing relationship, the mentor who is incarcerated and the mentee who's incarcerated and the mentor never have one another's personal contact information. All letters are disseminated through our 924 G Street Catholic Charities home office, if that makes sense. So the mentee would write Catholic Charities, 924 G Street. The mentors' letters, I have several mentors who just email me their letters and I physically mail them out for them. And did I answer your second part of that question? No, they do not, because many of our mentors, they desire to only be in a writing relationship. And so when let's say if we have a person who I'm a mentee and I only want to write, and I'm writing someone that once they are within about 30 days of a release date, we transition them to the person that they're going to meet face to face when they come home. And we have that is understood at the beginning of the writing relationship. It wouldn't let the mentor down or the mentee down or in any shape, form, or fashion, because we let them know up front that Miss Karen Clifton is going to be your mentor. She has agreed to do that in a writing relationship until you are released. And at that time, if the mentee chooses to remain in the program, and most do, we will match you up with someone who is going to meet you in person. So it's not a requirement.
And how long is the mentor commitment?
The mentor commitment is for 1 year. Pre-COVID, we asked that our mentors would meet with our mentees 1 hour a week, basically 4 hours a month. Pre-COVID, we asked for a minimum of 2 of those meetings to be in person, and the other 2 could be via phone call or video call. This is before COVID even, took over our country. But now that we're dealing with the COVID crisis, all of our mentor-mentee meetings are done via phone call or video call, and we've actually finding out that it is actually just as effective.
Can you describe, without revealing private information, a mentor relationship that has been helpful to a returning citizen? Do you have like a case study you could share?
We have a gentleman, I'll call him WF, because I just wrote a report about him today. He's fresh on my mind. He was actually, I don't know if any of you all may know Father Michael Bryant, who was actually the founder of the Welcome Home Reentry Mentoring Program. Father Bryant has been writing this gentleman for approximately 13 years. And when it came within 6 months of his release, he was transferred from the Federal Bureau of Prisons back to Washington, D.C. At that point, Father Bryant turned him over to us, and we matched him with a Pintor. When he was released during the COVID crisis. So the first thing had to take place, he had to go into 14 days of quarantine pre-release, then 14 days of quarantine at the designated spot, Minnesota Avenue, Days Inn, for another 14 days. We were able to get him connected with the Jubilee House Transition Program, where he is currently housed. Mr. WF, he served, again, a little over 13 years in prison. We've been able to connect him with a in-person mentor since he's been home. We've assisted him with buying clothes, boots, and uniform. He works in construction for a job. He's been out to 3 interviews so far, hasn't been hired yet, but he has a great attitude. We know that it's only a matter of time that he's gonna find employment. And Father Brian has been in a writing relationship with him, like I said, for over 13 years. That's not normally how it goes. It's normally only 1 year, but he's the founder. He really liked this guy, and they just stayed connected over the years.
And what's the typical age of the reentry citizen that someone might be talking to?
On average, 35 to 40 on average. But we do have them occasionally in their early 20s and 55 and over, but on average 35 to 40.
Beyond being a pen pal or mentor, are there other advocacy efforts that you support? Garrett Charities or your program, or that you recommend?
We're great supporters of an organization called Knights of Malta. They have a pen pal program that's very similar to what what we're trying to actually replicate with our Pintorship program. We're actually talking through a process of hopefully being able to collaborate with the individuals that they're writing when they're within a year of being released. One of the things that I'm a strong advocate for is reentry dorm programming on the inside of prisons. A lot of people in society are not aware of the term, well, exactly what the term means. When they say warehousing, that means a person is taken out of society to be placed in confinement without any any opportunities for educational advancement or career training. So they're just basically sitting idle. And most states do not recognize that we should implore our state prison systems and the federal prison system to provide that type of programming, job programming, educational opportunities while a person is incarcerated. That's the only way we can expect for them to come home better than they were before they got out. So, and then there's another one that I'm very high on in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's called Prisoners. It's called Hope for Prisoners. It is also a mentoring program, but every person that is a mentor in this program they work in criminal justice in some shape, form, or fashion. All of the mentors are either judges, police officers, court reporters, lawyers, in law school, in some form of law enforcement. That is their career, and they make up the mentoring core for that program out in Las Vegas. And they have a less than 1% recidivist rate. Awesome program.
Are there any book recommendations for people who'd like to learn more about our prison system and the reentry process?
Well, there's definitely going to be one, but I'll do some research and get a couple of others and send them over to you in email. But the book that was mentioned that we did up at Walker, Redeeming the Time. Well, let me get it right. Men of Destiny, Redeeming the Time, which shows Walker State Prison. The best way that I can describe it to you, this is how I think prison should be. Walker State Prison today is a community college inside of a fence. If you could imagine, if you could wrap your head around that idea, a local community college, it just happens to be a fence around it that has prison guards, but I will get a couple more over to you. Give me by Friday.
Can you talk about people who have been incarcerated because they can't pay court fees, bail, and justice?
There's a great initiative going on right now. A lot of social justice committees at many houses of worship are advocating for bailout programs because there are a number of states, I would say Maryland is one of them, they're working on it here in Maryland, where people who have, say, had a shoplifting charge, that the value of the merchandise taken exceeded the amount to make it a felony. And the individual would go to jail, not only be fingerprinted and booked is the word I want to say, but also be held until their court date if they couldn't pay their bond. And this is the problem with that is, in some of these instances, a person may be in jail for up to a year before they even get a court date. You hear me? What if the person who was arrested for this crime isn't even guilty? That means that they would have served a year before they had their day in court, only to be found guilty and then released. And there isn't any kind of, it's not like they leave with a $20,000 check because they kept them in prison. Kept them in jail for a year, even though they were found guilty. So that's the argument for the bailout program. I happen to be a little bit more, I kind of look at it a little bit closer, because when we're talking about I worked with a church in Atlanta that wanted to do a bailout program for Father's Day about 2 years ago. My problem with it was they raised $150,000 to do the bailout program. And it was available to anyone, any man that was in prison that just simply couldn't pay their bail. The problem is that many of these individuals, for the most part, had substance abuse issues. And so though they were bailed out of jail to be home with their family for Father's Day, if the root issue for them being in jail in the first place, the substance abuse, if it wasn't dealt with, we really didn't solve anything. And so I began to advocate, let's take money like that. What would be more effective is having more transitional house programs available for people who are coming out of jail and prison, because it is a huge need. There are many men and women who do not have the family support necessary to reacclimate into society, that's why mentors are so important. But having a place, if you could imagine coming back to Washington, D.C., if you didn't have any family. I have no family support, and I have to find a job, a place to live in Washington, D.C. That's difficult for people who've never committed a crime, much less someone with a felony on their record, maybe a GED, maybe just a high school diploma. You're talking about it's a very difficult situation. But when you have a program like the Jubilee House, they only have 10 beds for women and 10 beds for men. But what makes that program so wonderful is that a returning citizen can be enrolled in that program. They don't have to have a job, and they don't have to have a first month's rent. They don't have to have any money. The purpose is for them to move in, go through some workforce development training, job training, resume writing, interviewing training, sent out on to gain employment, and we hope to get them a job as soon as possible, so that at the conclusion of that year, they prayerfully would have saved up enough money, or at least a lump sum, that when they make their next step to independent living, they have something to get started with. That's a much more realistic situation for a reentry process for people who do not have family. Excuse me.
A couple more questions. What is the estimated racial breakdown of the DC prison population? What are the kinds of crimes? You've talked a lot about addiction. Is that are drug-related incarcerations the issue? And then what is the estimated cost for an individual to enter a transitional program?
The breakdown would be approximately 60% African American, 30% Latin American, 10% white. All right. Now, the estimated cost, if we had to programs, and there are a number of these, there are a number of transition house programs that are available, but the key, in order to be admitted, the returning citizen has to be employed, and they have to have the ability to pay their first and last month's rent. Can you imagine that? A returning citizen, in order to get in this program, they have to already be employed and be able to pay their first and last month's rent. The average cost for programs like that is from $175 to $220 a week is about what people pay. And when we talk about these transition house programs, especially in Washington, D.C., you're going to talk about a 5-bedroom house, and there are going to be 2 individuals to a room, and the cost would be, again, from $175 a week to $220 a week, depending on what part of town the house is located. These programs, they're great. One of them is called the Oxford House. They're great programs because during the process, They teach the men and women how to live in community. They teach them money management. I've gone to a few of the meetings where they have their budget meeting, because everyone in the household splits the overhead to live there. So they come together as a family once a month, and they actually look at a balance in the account for that house. They write a check for the light bill, for all of your bills, all your expenses. They balance it. Everyone in the house has an opportunity to review it. And what they're learning is, when they're living one day on their own, how to be responsible with managing their own expenses. It's not done for them. They do it as a team.
That's all the questions. I just wanted to say that, and Francis was with me, we did the recent training that at Catholic Charities, and it was not 3.5 hours, it was only 2. So just FYI.
Yay, better.
So Zoom is better for sure. And so just so everyone knows the next step, so you do that, and then I'll be in a training then with you, right? Or the next,
Yes.
So it's a 2-hour training, then maybe a 2-hour session with you. Is that,
Yes.
And then opportunities throughout the year. And I just want to remind people too, we are working with Ron on a phone effort this month. Returning citizens need a phone to do a lot of these things he's talked about today, to schedule job interviews, to find out about apartments. And so far we've raised $1,200. And so I'll include that link if you can think about it. $15 helps a refurbished phone, and $75 gives a phone and 3 months of Wi-Fi. So, so you can think about that and share that as an opportunity to help someone too. How many mentors are you looking for right now, or Pintors?
200.
All right.
To be seriously, I don't believe we could actually have more mentors than what we could match, to be honest. The way our programs are structured, we have a mentoring program in Washington, D.C., which I facilitate. We have one in Montgomery County, and we have one in Charles County. Not Charles, let me see, Montgomery, I'm sorry. PG County, Washington, D.C., and Montgomery County. Our Charles County program has been discontinued. Each one, the goal for each one is to have 50 mentors, 50 mentee matches per year. So our year, our fiscal year actually ends this month. So we're looking for 50 brand new mentors.
All right, great. Does anyone have any other questions? You can put them in the chat, or we're just grateful to have you here. And so I'll send out a link to this video, and as well as the volunteer form. Oh, we have one more question. Do you have time, Ron, for one more question?
Sure, yes, I do.
How are other parishes involved? Can you give examples of what other churches are doing to support your program?
One of the main ways that we actually did the mentor recruitment pre-COVID was to go out and actually attend a mass. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with the gentleman by the name of Deacon Bobby White. He would actually share a homily at the mass based around reentry, and then the parish would be directed to myself at the conclusion of the service if they had further interest in mentoring, to sign up and kind of exchange contact information. And that is how we did parish recruitment. I personally don't, it's not the most effective way. I like being able to have people who are already interested in doing something like this and bringing them together to share, basically like what we're doing right now. This to me is much more effective in doing the parish recruitment.
All right, great. So that'll be our last question. So I will send out to everyone who registered and who is attending today the link to the volunteer form, how to reach out to Ron, this video, and we'll get some books for the recommendations too that one of the attendees had requested. And I'll send the link about the phone too, because we'll wrap that effort up on June 30th. So
Okay.
thank you so much for being here. We are grateful to have you. Just for everyone who's on the call, our next one will be July 7th, and it will be with Reverend Selena Johnson. She is the pastor of Mount Zion United Methodist Church, and she will be talking about racism in the church. Is Christ divided? So I hope that you'll join us for that too. And again, Ron, thanks.
And if I can conclude with one quick thought, we right now, because Hope Village, I don't know if you are familiar with Hope Village, which was the transition, the halfway house for Washington, D.C. that closed at the end of April. A new transition house provider now has that contract. They're called Core DC. Their actual facility will not open until October the 1st. So the Bureau of Prisons actually granted sort of an early release to a great number of individuals due to this situation, so they wouldn't have to be transferred to Baltimore or to West Virginia. And they're on what is called home confinement. There's 145 right now. So therefore they have, the leg monitor thing, and they can't leave the house unless, it's coordinated with their case manager. The leg monitor monitors wherever they go. They can't go anywhere, without there being they're being tracked. That's what I'm trying to say. The reason I'm saying that is, we also have 50 DC residents who were transferred to the Baltimore halfway house. The whole cell phone drive came up because of this issue. Because many of these individuals came home quite a bit sooner than their families expected. They had not, many of the families don't even really have the financial wherewithal to meet the needs of this new person that's living in the house. So one of the reasons I was kind of late for the call also was I'm working with Catholic Charities. They're organizing a food distribution to be able to give groceries on this coming up Thursday to this population group, because when you think about a new adult living in someone's house that was already living paycheck to paycheck, if you could just, it's a difficult situation. And so just to help relieve a little bit of pressure from that household, Catholic Charities has been organizing food distributions for the families. And one of the other great needs are cell phones. Because in today's world, without a cell phone, you can't, so I'll leave it at that. You understand my point. But we really appreciate you all taking on that initiative. And there's going to be some people tremendously. I'm going to Baltimore next week to drop off some phones. How can they communicate? They can't look for a job. They can't. It's unbelievable. So we're at least trying to get that part taken care of, and then we'll move on to the next step with getting them housing here in DC and assimilated into society here back in the district, hopefully here very soon. But we really appreciate you all helping us with that.
No, thank you. And you asked why I read your whole bio, and I did because it's impressive. And we are grateful to have you be part of our community, and you're doing important work, and Holy Trinity is happy to accompany you on it. And I hope some people here will discern and see if this is an opportunity for them to, live out their faith in action. And we look forward to working with you, Ron. So thanks for your time today. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesus
Thank
is
you
the
very much.
answer to all of our world's problems. And you are the hands and feet that carry it out. And we just thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ron.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you.